Hello, my happy readers. It's Bedtime Stories with me, Issy. Are you ready to share a new story? The book I have chosen to read is called Dragonstones. If you have this book at home, you can read along with me. The author, the person who has written this story, and the illustrator, the person who has drawn all the pictures, is Carolyn Watson Dubishk. Now, Lizzy and her brother Ron are visiting their aunt, and they decide to wander off into the nearby forest. I wonder what happens. Shall we read and find out? Aunt Edwina clucked her tongue and shook her head. My mum was going on and on about our neighbour's front lawn. My father nodded vigorously, as if a couple of plastic flamingos were bound to destroy us all. Aunt Edwina's silver, wavy hair stuck out electrically from the sides of her head, and my brother Ron was kicking his foot against the coffee table. The tray of blueberry scones bounced slowly across the table, just as they reached the edge. Aunt Edwina's hand darted out and scooped up the whole tray. How about you kids take a walk? The woods are so pretty in autumn. Yes, go outside, said my mother, interrupting her rant. Aunt Edwina smiled mysteriously as she replaced the scones on the coffee table. Ron and I jumped up and made a hasty exit. Ron bolted across Aunt Edwina's perfectly manicured lawn to the edge of the woods. The leaves were steadily falling in the breeze, but they all landed in the woods or the road. Not a single leaf dared to touch my aunt's lawn. Ron had found a path and started to disappear down it, and I had to jog just to keep up with him. It only took a minute to get to the pond. The surface sparkled in the sun, but a dense mist stretched across the middle of the pond, making it difficult to see the other side. Ron picked up a small flat rock and skipped it out towards the middle. I can skip 6 times, I said, and jumped down to the water's edge. I bent down to pick up a rock when one thumped me in the leg. Hey, don't throw rocks at me, I shouted at Ron, but the puzzled look on his face told me it wasn't him. I didn't. It came from out there. He pointed to the mist. Throw another one. This time, he took a larger flat rock and skipped it 4 times out into the mist. We could still hear it skipping when it came back towards us and landed steaming in the mud next to my feet. I handed Ron another stone. He threw it with all his might, but the 3rd stone came skipping back like the others. Just as it reached the shore, Ron reached down to catch it. Ouch! He shrieked and dropped the stone. It burned me, Lizzy. It's really hot. I looked down at the 3 stones and the steam that was still rising from them. I picked up the first one that hit me in the leg. I hadn't felt the heat through my dress, but it was still warm. Maybe someone's throwing them. Let's go to the other side. Ron nodded in agreement, as he sucked on his sore fingers. Carefully, we plodded along the shoreline, stepping on and around rocks and weeds. The pond was a lot larger than it looked. Just as we thought perhaps we should turn back, we found ourselves engulfed in a thick, white smoke. Coughing, I tumbled to the ground and found Ron was already there, coughing next to me. Close to the ground, the smoke was thinner. Something moved quickly through the smoke, and the rock I'd brought started to warm up in my hand. A glowing red spider web-like pattern appeared over the rock's surface. Ron, look at the rock, I whispered. Weird. Why are you whispering? Because someone's out there. A crackling, rustling noise filled the hushed silence. Who's there? Ron shouted into the smoky void surrounding us. Why have you come here? Rumbled a deep, gravelly voice. At the sound of the voice, the smoke grew thicker and the air hotter. The ground trembled, and through the dense white void that surrounded us appeared the huge head of a dragon. His blazing yellow eyes narrowed as he peered at Ron and I. What's this? Human children? But how did you cross the barrier? My gaze fell upon the glowing stone. So you're the ones throwing rocks at me. He grinned wickedly, showing a mouthful of sharp and pointy teeth. You mean, cough, cough, you're the one throwing them back? Did I hit you? As you can see, you hit me. He gestured to his back, which was covered in the same spiderweb pattern that marked the stone. Why did that happen? I whispered in awe. The dragon snorted and growled. That mark has been upon me ever since that vile witch Edwina trapped me here, banished forever from the human world, to where only magical creatures may tread. His voice became shrill as he spoke, and he stomped and shook with anger. Then, in a flash, his massive face was next to mine. Until now, it's been 500 years since I smelled a human, and you smell just as tasty as I remember. With his hot breath upon me, I was sure I was doomed. I stood frozen to the spot, unable to move. Ron tugged on my sleeve and pointed into the smoky void. I could see a shadowy figure coming towards us. The dragon's eyes narrowed with suspicion. An instant later, there in front of us stood Aunt Edwina. She held both hands up in front of her, palms facing us. "Leave these children alone," she shouted, "or I shall banish you so far away you will be alone for all eternity." The dragon shuddered with fright. He backed away from my face and slipped back into the white and smoky void. Ron and I stood with our mouths agape and stared at our aunt. Aunt Edwina smiled and put her arms around our shoulders. Then she led us out of the dragon's lair. When we reached the far side of the pond, I stopped to pick up the dragon stones we'd left behind. They too had the dragon's spider web mark. As we walked back to the house, Ron was the first to speak. "Aunt Edwina, how did you know to come and save us?" Aunt Edwina furrowed her brow. "Are you kidding? I'm just glad you stayed out of the backyard." What a fantastic story that was! Lizzy and Ron most certainly had quite an exciting adventure. Imagine skipping stones and then being thrown back to you by a dragon. Do you think Aunt Edwina is the witch that the dragon was talking about? I hope you've enjoyed this Shed Time story, and if you want to, you can like, share, follow and subscribe to Shed Time Stories. Then you'll be ready for the next book we can share together. Bye-bye.